Welcome back to Sneakers, Cars, and Leadership. I'm Dre Hub, and we're officially kicking off Season 2. If you've been rocking with me since Season 1, you already know what we do around here. I love sneakers, I love cars, and I'm fascinated by leadership, especially what it takes to actually lead when no one hands you a playbook. And don't worry, the sneakers and the cars are not going anywhere. But this season, we're going a little bit deeper. Because the longer I lead, the more I realize that leadership isn't just about strategy, titles, or how many people report to you. It's about the tools you develop along the way. How do you communicate when the conversation gets uncomfortable? How do you set clear expectations without micromanaging? How do you build trust, handle conflict, make decisions when there isn't a perfect answer? Leading people who don't like you. It may be one of the hardest. How do you keep growing when you're already the person everybody looks to for answers? That's where we're going in Season 2. I'm going to share lessons from my own leadership journey, the wins, the mistakes, the things I've learned the hard way, and some things I'm still trying to figure out. But you're just not going to hear from me. Just like Season 1, I'm bringing my peers, bringing friends, mentors, and some amazing leaders to unpack the tools they've developed throughout their careers. And we're going to talk about leadership beyond the conference room, because how you lead shows up in your career, your relationships, your family, your community, and ultimately in who you are when the title comes off. Of course, we're still going to talk about what I love to have on my feet. We're still going to talk about what I wish I was driving. Sneakers, cars, leadership. Season 2 is about 6. Underneath all 3 of those: growth, identity, discipline, relationship, decisions, failure, purpose, and becoming a better leader and a better human being. So whether you're leading a company, leading a team, leading your family, or just learning how to lead yourself, there's a seat for you here. Welcome to Season 2 of Sneakers, Cars, and Leadership. So let's get into it. Today, I am very excited, very happy. I'm going to be kicking off a 5-episode series, and we'll see where it goes. The series is called The Algorithm Doesn't Care About Your Title. And when we jump in, and before you tune out because you think this is going to be just another AI hype conversation, I need you to hear me, and I need you to hear me clearly. This is not a conversation about technology. This is a conversation about leadership. AI just happens to be the thing that's exposing it. And some of you all probably can relate. Some of you all might learn something new. Today, we're going to talk about the delegation problem. And the premise is simple. Most leaders think that they know how to delegate. They don't. And AI is about to make that painfully visible, if it hasn't already. So we're going to just get right into it.
Sneakers on, engine running, leadership in the air. From the boardroom to the black tie, we do it with care. This is SCL, this is SCL, where the culture meets the call. Sneakers on, engine running, leadership in the air.
Here's the leadership tension I want you to sit in today. You've been handed one of the most powerful thinking tools in history of work. You have access to AI that can write, analyze, synthesize, draft, summarize, and strategize. There's a lot of eyes at a level that would have required a team of analysts 3 years ago. And a significant number of senior leaders are either not using it badly, or using it in ways that reveal something uncomfortable about how we actually operate. The quality of your AI output is a direct reflection or mirror of the quality of your thinking. If the output is weak, then your prompt, your brief, it was weak. The brief was you. Now, I say that not to call anybody out. I was there. I say it because I've lived it. I've sat in front of this tool and gotten something mediocre back and immediately wanted to just blame the tool. And then I had to be honest with myself. I always got to have that self-reflection moments. I didn't give it effect to work with. I gave it the same vague, unpressured thinking I've been getting away with in meetings for years. AI doesn't absorb ambiguity the way your team does. Your team has context. They've been with you long enough to know what you probably meant. They read the room. Maybe they read your mind. This allowed them to fill in the gaps, and sometimes at their own expense. AI gives you back exactly what you gave it. No more, no less. That's not a technology problem. That's a leadership problem that technology just made visible. And here, where it gets really interesting for those of us at a certain level, when you spend years building teams that compensate for your ambiguity, talented people who know how to translate incomplete direction into solid output, and we call that delegation. We weren't delegating. We were outsourcing our own clarity. And those two things are very different. Today, we're going to break down what real delegation looks like. Why most leaders at different levels can't actually do it. And what AI is forcing us to confront about the gap between where we think we are and where we actually are. So let's set this posture first. You have earned this, all right? But that's sneakers, cars, and leadership. So we're going to talk about the kicks of the day. Today's pick is the New Balance 990. Made in America. If you know, you know. And if you don't know, let me put you on real quick. The 990 is not a fashion shoe. It never was. It doesn't come out dropping heat on Instagram and these stupid sneaker apps on a consistent basis with some celebrity co-signing and a 3-second sellout. It just holds. It's been in the New Balance catalog since 1982, the year I was born. It's a great year. 40 plus years, same silhouette, same construction, built for performance, built to last, built by people who actually make things with their hands in factories in New England. There's no gimmick in the 990. It's not trying to be anything better than what it was. And you know what? That's exactly the energy I need you to have in this conversation today. The 990 is what I call a long game shoe. It doesn't peak. It doesn't have the moment. It has a reputation built over decades of consistent performance. A lot of leaders want that Jordan 1 moment, the drop, the hype, the sellout. They want the announcement, the, initiative launch, the headline. And those have their place. They do. They do have their place. But the leaders who actually build something, they're 990 leaders. They show up the same way, day after day after day, in rooms that aren't glamorous, doing the hard work that doesn't get applause. Build something that lasts. And here's the connection to today's topic. Real delegation is a long game discipline. You don't build it in a quarter. You build it over years of being clear, being consistent, and being willing to slow down long enough to actually transfer all that knowledge you have, not just tasks. The 990 energy today is we're not here to be flashy. We're here to be right. We're here to build something. Build something that holds. So, this is really a key moment that we're living in with technology today, that AI, this AI age we're living in. So, now I want to jump over to the ride. So, today's ride is a well spec'd out pickup truck. And I'm being intentional about the word spec because I'm not talking about a stripped down work truck. I'm not talking about a luxury bro wagon that's never seen a load in the bed, never seen a lick of dirt, never been off road, those mall crawlers, something in the middle, something capable, something honest. And I'm a Ford guy, so the pick is that F-150 mid-trim Lariat V8 or the twin turbo EcoBoost. If you're trying to be efficient without apologizing, enough towing capacity to actually haul something, comfortable enough to spend a full day in for function, but not ignoring the fact that you spent real time behind the wheel. The pickup is one of the most honest vehicles on the road. It tells you exactly what it is, what's it there for. And it doesn't perform usefulness, it delivers. The leadership connection here goes right to the heat. A pickup truck is only as useful as the person loading it. You can have a class 4 hitch, a 1,200-pound payload capacity, and a bed liner. And if you don't know how to use it, you either overload it or you drive it empty. So most leaders are driving pickup trucks that are empty. They're overloading one corner of the bed and wondering why the ride feels uneven. Delegation is knowing what the truck is rated for, loading it correctly, and putting trust in the suspension. You don't have to hover over it when it's hauling. You secure the load before you left the driveway. That's the work. That's the work. That is the work. So today's ride is built for utility and built for trust, both of which we're going to need for this conversation. All right? And I love it. I had an F-150, and it's a great vehicle. And hopefully I'm looking to get an F-350 because I want to get a fifth wheel, go camping, take the kids out. So you got to make sure you got the right tool, the right pickup truck, really have everything there to do the job that you're trying to do. So let's define the problem precisely, because vague problems produce what? Vague solutions. Delegation is not a task assignment. So say it with me. If you're listening to this, repeat this in your head, say it out loud. Delegation is not a task assignment. A task assignment is, hey, can you pull something together, a summary of the last quarter's numbers by Thursday? That's a handoff. You're moving a to-do list from your list to someone else. Nothing's wrong with that, because you have people on your team that have special skills and they're great at what they do. But that's not delegation. That's traffic management. Real delegation has 3 components that most leaders skip entirely. I call them the 3 T's: transfer of context, transfer of authority, and transfer of accountability. The 3 T's of real delegation. So transfer of context. This is where you explain not just what you want done, but why it matters, what success looks like, what constraints exist, and what you already tried, like what you already tried, or maybe what you already considered. Most leaders skip this entirely because they don't have the time or because they've never actually thought it through themselves, and so they just want to pass it off. If you can't explain the context, you don't have clarity. And if you don't have clarity, you can't delegate. You can only assign. So the second T, transfer of authority. This is where you explicitly give someone the power to make decisions without a defined scope, without coming back to you for every choice. Most leaders say they do this, especially senior leaders. They say they do this, but most don't. What they actually do is delegate the work and retain authority themselves, which means the person only delegated to is now executing your work and with one hand tied behind their back. Because their hand is tied behind their back because they're waiting on you to be the bottleneck at every decision gate. If every meaningful choice still rotates or routes through you, you haven't delegated. You've created a very elaborate illusion of delegation. Third one, transfer of accountability. This is hard. It's probably one of the hardest out of the three. Because it means when the work doesn't go well, the person you delegated it to, they own it. If you owning the fact that you either chose wrong or you set them up to fail. Most leaders transfer the task, claim that they transferred their authority, but silently they retain the accountability. So when something goes sideways, they swoop in, override the decision, fix it themselves, and then wonder why nobody on their team ever seems to develop or grow or get to that next level. Because you never actually let them be accountable. You said the words, but your behavior told a different story. And you're probably wondering, like, okay, well, what does this have to do with AI, Dre? Okay. Now, here is where AI enters the conversation. It comes into the room. And why I think it's one of the most important mirrors any leader can have right now in their tool belt. When you sit down to prompt the AI tool to help you with something real, not something trivial that you can Google, something that actually requires judgment, you yourself are forced to do all three T's in real time by yourself. You have to transfer context. You have to explain it to the tool what you're trying to accomplish, what matters, what the strengths are. If you can't do it for AI, you couldn't do it for your team either. You just had the luxury of a team that filled those gaps. AI has no gap filling instincts, none whatsoever. It gives you back the quality of the thinking you put in it. That's either a gift or an indictment. you know, depending on what you want to put it in. So, let me tell what exactly happens when leaders really start using AI seriously. Phase one, they use it for the easy stuff. Emails, summaries, formatting. Things that don't require any real thinking of them. And they think, okay, that's helpful. And it is. It is. They're not getting anywhere near the ceiling of what this tool can do. Phase two, they're trying to use it for something harder. A strategy memo, a stakeholder communication, analysis of a complex business problem. They won't come back It's a generic. It's not wrong, exactly, but it's thin. It doesn't sound like them. It doesn't have the nuance to the situation that it requires. They blame the tool. It goes back to that, what I said earlier, blaming the tool. Phase 3. And this is where real leaders, we separate ourselves. They separate themselves. They realize the tool isn't the problem. The brief is, the prompt is, and they start treating every AI interaction as a discipline. They bring specificity. They bring context. They bring grief, the prompt, the way they wish someone had taught them to build project scope 20 years ago. So now you ask yourself, what a real brief looks like. So I want to give you a concrete example of the difference. Because this is practical and I'm not interested in keeping this theoretical. A weak brief, it sounds like this. Write me a memo about our Q3 performance and what we need to focus on in Q4. That's a weak brief. A real brief sounds like this. I'm a senior leader in a commercial organization. We have a Q3 where revenue hit target, but margin underperformed by 180 basis points, primarily because of the distribution cost overruns in 3 different markets. I need to communicate this to a senior leadership team that is going to be frustrated by the margin miss, but they don't fully understand the cost structure dynamics. So I need a memo that acknowledges the miss correctly, frames the root cause clearly without making it sound like an excuse, and lands on 3 specific actions we're taking in Q4 to recover. So your tone should be direct and confident, not defensive. 2 pages maximum. That's the second brief. That's the second prompt. It is a delegation. You transfer context. You define the authority. The tool knows what to decide and what not to decide. You set up accountability by defining what success looks like to the tool. The exact same discipline you need to build a high-performing team is the discipline AI is now asking of you every single time you open up a new conversation. The leaders who get good at this, they aren't just getting better at AI. You'll start to see. They're getting better at delegation. They're getting more precise about their own thinking. They're being forced to have clarity. They've been outsourcing to talent direct reports for years. So you move into the uncomfortable organizational truth. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Some leaders, some of them, most are resistant to AI adoption. They aren't resistant because of technology anxiety. They're resistant because adopting it would expose they don't actually know how to give clear direction. If your value add as a leader has been making judgment calls based on information that your team packages and presents to you, and AI can now do the packaging faster, cheaper, then the question really becomes, what's the quality of your actual judgment? And do you trust it enough to put it in the prompt and see what comes back? That's the real question. And it's not comfortable. But it's the question that separates leaders who are going to thrive in this environment from leaders who want to find themselves increasingly irrelevant. The leaders who thrive are the ones who can articulate their thinking precisely enough to direct a tool and who can evaluate the output critically enough to know when it's right and when it's not. That requires actual expertise, not rank, not tenure, expertise. So, the metaphor of the day. And we're going to the kitchen for this one. We're going in that cabinet. We're going in there. Do you ever watch someone try to cook without a recipe? Not because a skilled improviser who's cooked this dish hundreds of times, but because they just don't want to do the prep work of figuring out what they're actually making, what they're cooking, what they're baking. They open the refrigerator. They pull some things out. They start chopping. They start cutting. They're not building a dish. They're managing the ingredients. And somewhere around the 30-minute mark, they've got a pan full of something that technically has nutritional values, but doesn't cohere. It doesn't have flavor profile. It's not a meal. It's an accident. And they look at it and say, the stove must have been off. That's what unclear delegation looks like. You're not building a dish. You're handing somebody a refrigerator full of ingredients and asking them to figure out what you wanted for dinner. Now to contrast that with a leader who knows how to cook. Before we touch a single ingredient, we know what we're making. You know, they know the finished dish and they know what it's supposed to taste like. They've prepared. They have clarified the onions. They've measured the stock. They've set the temperature. They're not just winging it. They are executing. And when they hand off part of the process to someone else in the kitchen, you handle the sauce while I work on the protein. That person knows exactly what they're doing because the head cook, the leader, you, was clear about the dish from the beginning, from the start. Before you lit the first burner on that stove or set the dial on that oven. The So What Monday morning application. Here is how this plays out on Monday mornings. Before you delegate anything this week to a person or to your AI tool, ask yourself 3 questions. You can write these down if you need to. Because the discipline is in the action. It's in the action. Question 1, can I describe the finished dish? Not the ingredients, the process. What does done look like? You got to work backwards. What does a successful outcome actually mean? If you can't answer this in 2 sentences, you're not ready to delegate. You need to cook by yourself first before you bring somebody else in. Question 2, have I handed over the recipe or just a task? Did I give the person or the tool enough context to make decisions in spaces I haven't explicitly covered? Because there will always be spaces that the prompt or the brief can't cover everything. The question is whether the recipe has enough understanding of the goal to navigate gaps intelligently. Now, question 3. Am I willing to taste what comes back without grabbing the spoon? This is the accountability piece. If someone brings you output and your first instinct is to redo it yourself, ask yourself whether that's because the output is genuinely wrong or because it's different from how you would have done it. Different isn't wrong. I will say that again. Different isn't wrong. And if you can't resist the spoon, you haven't delegated. What you have done is audition someone to cook a meal you were always going to make yourself. You were always going to do it. You were always going to write that memo, do that analysis, do the report out. Those 3 questions for a direct report. They work for an AI prompt. They work for a cross-functional team. You'll pull them in for some strategic initiative, some tiger team. The discipline is the same. The application is the same. The only variable, and hear me now, the only variable is the recipient. It's the person who's receiving it. So we're at the close, and you know how this works. I'm not leaving you with a list. I'm leaving you with maybe 1 or 2 things. And the one thing you can do in the next 24 hours is find one thing you've been meaning to delegate to a person or to AI and build a real brief or prompt for it. Not a task assignment. A brief, context, authority, and what done looks like. That's it. That's it. One brief, build it right. If it's a direct report, sit down with them, maybe 15 minutes. Don't email the brief. Talk it through. And then sit there, mouth closed, ears open, eyes open, and watch what questions they ask. The questions will tell you where your clarity breaks down. That's real data. That's real leadership development happening in real time. If it's AI, open the tool, Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, DeepSeek, whatever you got, and write the brief like you mean it. Give it the context. Give it the constraints. Give it the definition of success. Then evaluate what comes back, not on whether it's perfect, but on whether your brief, your prompt was clear enough to produce something. Directionally right. If it's not, your brief, your prompt needs work. That's on you to fix it. Either way, you're building that muscle that most leaders have never had to build themselves because they had talented people, according to them, in their team, in their organization, compensating for that gap. That gap is closing. The leaders who built the muscle now are going to be significantly ahead of the ones who don't. The leaders that are building it now will be well ahead of the ones who don't. That 990 New Balance shoe pick that I talked about today, it wasn't random. That shoe doesn't have a moment. It has a reputation built over decades of showing up the same way. Build yours the same way. One precise, intentional rep at a time. Okay? So thank you for joining. That's the episode for today. The algorithm doesn't care about you. All right? The algorithm does not care about you. So there are 5 leadership problems that AI is putting on the spotlight. And one of them are about technology. Episode 2 is called The Bottleneck That Has a Name Tag. So we're going to talk about what happens when AI scales your operation, scales whatever you're doing, and in doing so, it makes it crystal clear exactly who and what is slowing everything down. So you can see what that bottleneck is. You want to be in the room for that one. You want to be listening to the podcast in your car, however you do it. So if today's episode hit home and landed with you, share it with one leader in your circle. Not a blast, just one person. All I'm asking for, just share it with one person. Someone you think that needs to hear it. That's how this grows. You could find out more about us, more about the podcast, Think Across Leadership. So leave a review if you're willing. You know, it kind of helps people find the show and learn more about it. I'm Dre Hub. This is Think Across Leadership. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and make sure your brief or your prompt is right before you hand anything off. Thank you.